The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, has insisted that the federal government will commence a phased removal of petrol subsidy from June next year, noting that the provisions for the removal of subsidy had already been made in the 2023 to 2025 medium-term plan. The minister's comments followed an earlier advisory by the World Bank Country Director for Nigeria, Mr. Shubham Chaudhuri, who maintains that subsidy remains the white elephant contributing to Nigeria's macroeconomic woes. Meanwhile, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited maintains that crude oil theft has continued to take a severe toll on its performance, saying that this is in addition to security challenges that hinder oil production in some terminals. Let's talk more about this, give insight into this. I have joining me via Zoom. He's a lawyer, energy lawyer actually, and an energy analyst, Dr. Ayodele Oni. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Oni. Is this the first time we're having you in the air? Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Thank you very much for having me.
Before I go into subsidy issues, let's talk about crude production. News today, the NNPC GMD is, not GMD now, it's now the CEO. It used to be the GMD, but now is the group chief executive officer of the company, being a limited liability company, is saying that they will meet 1.8 million barrels per day of production, and even projecting that by 2024, they should be doing as much as 2.2 million barrels per day. To me, this looks like a tall order. But with what we have today, 1.25, I think, aside condensate, what would you say is a positive coming in with regards to this fight against crude oil theft, which is eating deep into the fabric of Nigeria's economy?
Yeah, I think it's positive news, and I think it can't be sustained as long as government continues to do what it's been doing recently. One of those things is working with indigenous people in those areas who understand the terrain. You are aware of the pipeline surveillance contract with Tom Polo. That's one thing that is very relevant, and also and that helps eradicate crude oil theft, pipeline vandalism, or reduces it substantially. Also, you are aware that there were damages across along those pipeline routes. Now, some of those are live and are now back in production. Beyond that, the private sector too has been working hard to have alternative arrangements for movement of its crude from production point to export terminal. So a number of these factors have come together to ensure that we can produce much more than we've been producing in a while. And I think this is very good news. If you look at it, it's absolutely good news. And it's something I believe should continue in the mid to long term. I think it's something that should continue. And I think it's positive for us.
Practical steps to protect the pipeline, that's securing the pipeline. We see people talking about technology, drones, technology now to meet up with all of this. Aside giving the contract to those that I think are getting positives from it, can government do more with protecting our pipelines? What more can we do?
Okay, it always does make sense to look elsewhere and see what's been done. And I think that you need to look at it from the perspective that you cannot isolate any economic activity without taking into consideration the entire macroeconomic situations and scenario you find, indices you find in a country. If you have a large population not working, a large population underemployed, then criminality will be the order of the day. You understand? And if you look at even economic indices, if you look at it, if you compare the last three administrations, you find out that in terms of crude oil production and in terms of level of poverty, this has been the highest level of production, level of poverty, and the lowest level of production. It's been difficult meeting our quota. It was much better during Obasanjo's time and when we had Jonathan, stroke Yar'Adua, because the economy was much better. That's something you have to take into consideration. So everything does work together. Level of poverty means more people would want to still to be able to sustain their lives. Of course, you will also say that some of these are petty thieves. So it's more of organized crime too. So it's a combination of various factors that have brought us here. It then means that one thing would not take us out of here. It's a combination of several things we need to take into consideration to sustain this. We need to continue to ensure that our people get busy. We need to ensure that we use technology. We need to borrow from elsewhere, what they've done elsewhere in terms of technology, using drones. Those things are not perfect. And one thing the NNPC, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, has done recently is trying to use SCADA. They call it supervisory control and data acquisition, some technology that can remotely monitor pipelines, infrastructure, facilities, and all of that. Those are some of the things they use elsewhere in the world, and similar to what they use in the power sector too, to be able to detect where there's a fault. So I understand that the company, the NNPC, for not wanting to call that name in full, has began to deploy that technology too. So this is what they do elsewhere. So if we're willing to do that, and when people get caught, they are actually punished. Part of the challenge is that when the law isn't applied the way it ought to, our problem isn't even not having sufficient laws. It's application. It's ensuring implementation. Someone steals ₦1 billion, you tell them to pay a fine of ₦1 million. How does that work? You're encouraging other people to do the same because they know that the punishment is not commensurate. That's if they ever get punished. The punishment isn't commensurate with the offense. So it's many things, from legal regime to use of technology to working with indigenous peoples in that area, and to ensuring even government itself is not a party to many of these things happening.
There. Dr. Tony, let's follow up with NNPC. We've been talking about it being a limited liability company and, of course, should be profitable and accountable to more than 200 million Nigerians as we entrust this company with the management being headed by Mr. Mele Kyari. But the subsidy issue comes in, and NNPC says they now deal with government on commercial basis because they have to be responsible for whatever kobo comes out of that entity at the moment. It now shows us that one way or the other, there is a move to phase out subsidy. And even all of the frontliners talking about the presidential candidates are saying that subsidy has to go. What is your reaction to all of this talks around subsidy? I know we've talked about this before, but at the moment, with the heat of the elections and everybody preparing, do you think that that political will is there now to let this go?
Well, I think the devil is in the detail, and the taste of if you want to taste the pudding, you need to then eat it. Until these guys get into power and they get going, that's when we know whether they've got the political will, to be honest. Because, for example, this administration has pushed that target to after it leaves office. I think it's June next year, when they leave May 29th. Showing that there isn't that political will, let the next administration deal with that mess. That's fine. But I think that to remove subsidy fairly, I'm not sure you can remove it wholesale. I think it has to be a phased removal. And I think and this is my own personal view based on my research. I think you need to look at it from the perspective of, one, do we refine sufficiently? Two, do people have alternative means of transportation in particular, as opposed to relying on PMS? And a third one is, do we have sufficient power generation? Because public power, if we have sufficient public power and we have people using alternative means other than their vehicles, or they use their vehicles for only a limited period of time, so there are a lot of parking spots where you can park and then ride a boat or something, or the train, it means that even if subsidy is removed and prices go up by 100%, if people reduce the quantity of petroleum products they use because of these factors, they have electricity all of the time, they have alternative means to transportation, and we refine sufficiently. It means that if we refine sufficiently first, it won't be as high as it would have been landing costs, because you remove about 7 heads. Transportation, ship to ship, haulage, insurance, remove our 7 heads. That's one. In terms of the overall quantity, if people have sufficient power supply, public power supply, and have alternative means to transport, it then means that the quantity reduces. So if you have a 50% to 100% increase in petroleum product prices at the pump, and you have a 70% reduction in quantity you use, you will still not spend more than you are currently spending, if you understand the analysis. So if these things are in place, then it's fair to remove subsidy. Otherwise, I struggle to see the fairness in removing subsidy. Yes, it's fiscal rascality to continue to pay subsidy as things stand. But life is not straitjacketed. There would be considerations beyond your fiscals, What else are Nigerians benefiting from paying taxes for being an oil-producing country? Those are questions people will ask. So yes, I support the removal of subsidy, but I think it should be phased, and these factors should be taken into consideration. So as we improve power availability, public power availability, we can take out a percentage of subsidy, and as we have alternative means like the blue line, the Lagos State government just did make available. If other states do the same, or have their own alternatives, then you can begin to phase out subsidy. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be fair to you and I, actually, and the common man. Those are my own views about subsidy, but it has to go.
Let's talk about returning the 4 existing refineries, making them functional. This has also been mentioned by the minister and, of course, by the CEO of the NNPC Limited, saying that this refineries will get back to stream and start production, because that's the argument in some quarters, are saying that we need to improve local refining and not allow import-driven deregulation. That is the fear of many. And I'll ask you that question in 2 folds. Look at what is happening with the price of diesel. Look at what is happening with the price of aviation fuel. These two have been deregulated. Kerosene sells so high at the moment per liter. So you wouldn't blame Nigerians if they are scared about the removal of subsidy.
Yes, correct. You wouldn't blame Nigerians if they are scared. And even I am scared. So the truth is, and remember, I did mention 3 factors. And one of the primary factors I mentioned is local refining. If we don't refine locally, there's really not much justification to remove subsidy. If you are not value adding, there's no point in removing subsidy, and people will cry. Cost of production will go substantially high, would increase substantially. It would be quite an event, to be honest, if it's removed wholesale without 1 or 2 of those factors being in place. Our own local refining and two of those other factors I've mentioned, alternative means for transportation, and having our own public power supply available, sufficiently available. So yes, refining is very important, because beyond the price of petroleum products internationally, a number of costs are included in that landing cost, and they're up to 7 heads, and I'd mentioned some of them around ship-to-ship transfer, the haulage, insurance, all of those freights, all of those play a critical role in determining the landing price. So yes, if we do remove subsidy and don't begin to produce locally, it would be a problem for us. And the vagaries of international events will continue to be a problem for us. So I think it's critical, and everyone should be scared and concerned about removing subsidy without ensuring this is in place. Although, the Petroleum Industry Act, I think in Section 205 thereabout, requires the authority to allow pricing to be free market, so to speak, But of course, there are other provisions which generally empower the authority to fix prices. So yes, I think it's always been anticipated that it be removed, but it shouldn't be removed without us producing, refining rather locally.
Indeed, that's true. But before I let you go, almost finally, another worrisome thing for marketers is this issue of dollarization of some payments in the system. I just want to know, why can't we pay most of these bills in Naira? We are not a dollarized economy. We don't spend dollars here. And that, they say, is affecting foreign exchange market one way or the other. What is your reaction? You're a player in the industry, and I'm sure you understand some of the basics of this, my question. Why do we have to dollarize most of these payments to some agencies of government?
Because they're international commodities. And imagine you have an EPC contract and you want to get one of the best EPC contractors in the world. They're not going to take Naira. You might have a split, an 80-20% split, but it'll be mostly dollar because they have to buy equipment. And the guys you're buying equipment from, the OEMs, they call them OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, will only collect USD. So by nature, energy is a dollar business, especially if you're importing. If you're not importing and you can produce locally, fine, good and well, fine for you. But if you can't, you'd have regular maintenance, you have your O&M, you have your long-term service agreement, you have those arrangements in place, and none of those reputable, and I don't want to mention names because it's not a platform to market anyone. I don't want to mention names. None of them is going to accept Naira. Maybe Naira for certain consumables that are produced here, and maybe the local content, the Local Content Act does require certain provisions, around 10% of contract sums reserved in Nigeria and all of that. They leave those for paying staff salary, Nigerian staff salary, and a number of things. Other than that, it's difficult to Naira-nize energy issues, energy commodities. As long as it's an international commodity, and there are several factors that are foreign by nature connected to that market. And once that's the case, you can't really completely stop using dollars. You don't have a choice. We really do not have so much of a choice unless we begin to produce locally, begin to refine locally, and do a number of these things locally. Even if you want to refine locally, a portion of that will still be USD.
So what are you thinking this year? Where do you think the price would stay? Nigeria has put its budget at about $75 for a barrel of oil. What do you think will play out in international market in regards to pricing? Let's wrap up on that note.
I'm not a prophet, so it's difficult, and I don't have a crystal ball. I think I left that in my room. If it was with me here, I'd probably be able to look into that crystal ball and tell you. But I think government is about right. I think if the war does end, there'll be a lot of rebuilding, reconstruction, and all of that. Now, you still need, for every equipment, for every industrial usage, you still need a lot of crude. So I see demand not stalling. There are issues in China. I think that government is about right. You may not have the $190, but I think 75, 74, in the 70s would be about right for this year. That's my guess in terms of what I see happening in the world. But beyond that, one can't say for certain. But I think it will be about 70. No one predicted the war. No one knew that was going to happen. The year before, I doubt that anyone would say oil prices will be what they were this year. So it's usually very difficult to determine that. But you could hazard a guess based on what you see happening in the world. Oni. So those are my thoughts.
Dr. Ayodele Oni, I must thank you so much for your time. Energy lawyer and analyst. Do enjoy the rest of your day. We appreciate your time and your contributions on the program.